Middle-earth, the legendary land brought to life by J.R.R. Tolkien, is filled with awe-inspiring landscapes and epic tales of heroism. But beyond its beauty and grandeur lies a darker, more sinister side. From cursed strongholds to haunted forests, these places are not for the faint-hearted. In this video, we're delving deep into the 7 most horrifying places in Middle-earth, where danger lurks, evil thrives, and darkness reigns. Now, brace yourself as we journey through these nightmarish locations. 1. Mordor, the Land of Shadow. Mordor is more than just a barren wasteland. It is the embodiment of fear, desolation, and malevolent power. Positioned in the southeast of Middle-earth, this forsaken land is surrounded by the blackened Eafel mountain range, as if the earth itself is trying to contain the evil within. Yet no natural barrier can truly keep Sauron's malevolent influence from spreading beyond its borders. The very atmosphere of Mordor is toxic, not only due to the industrial fumes from Mount Doom, but also because of the lingering dark magic that saturates every inch of this landscape. The air is suffocating and oppressive, thick with an acrid stench that chokes those who dare breathe it. Even the sun is a distant, barely visible orb, forever cloaked behind thick, roiling clouds of ash and smoke. This land is void of natural life. No green plants, no animals, just endless stretches of cracked earth and jagged rock formations that resemble the claws of some great beast reaching out from the ground. Mount Doom, the fiery heart of Mordor, is a constant threat, its volcanic fury always simmering just below the surface. Rivers of molten lava course through its veins, giving off a hellish red glow that can be seen for miles. The mountain, known as Orodruin, serves as Sauron's personal forge, where he created the One Ring and sought to destroy the world of men. Its endless eruptions are like the heartbeat of Mordor itself, a pulsing reminder that this land is alive with a dark, malevolent power. Sauron's tower, Barrow Downs, looms over this hellscape like a watchful god. The eye of Sauron, burning and unblinking, sits atop the tower, scanning the land day and night, hunting for the ring and its bearers. Those who come too close to Mordor's borders feel this eye upon them, an overwhelming sense of dread and exposure as though they are naked before a wrathful deity. It is said that Sauron's gaze can pierce all defenses, laying bare the thoughts and hearts of those who cross his path. Mordor is not only home to the Dark Lord, but also to his vast army of orcs, trolls, and other twisted creatures. These armies are bred in the deep, black pits of Mordor, where they are trained in cruelty and violence. The air is filled with the sounds of marching feet, the clashing of weapons, and the guttural shouts of the orcs as they prepare for war. Every corner of Mordor oozes with malevolence, and even its inhabitants, enslaved humans and the twisted, deformed orcs, are just as much prisoners of its horror as any who would be foolish enough to enter uninvited. The land of Mordor is designed to break the spirit. Travelers who dare cross its barren plains feel the weight of hopelessness bearing down on them, each step becoming more laborious than the last. The very ground itself seems to sicken the soul, and every breath drawn in Mordor feels like a battle against an overwhelming sense of despair. Even those who escape its borders are forever marked by the trauma of its darkness. Frodo Baggins, who ventured into Mordor to destroy the One Ring, carried its scars, both physical and emotional, long after his journey had ended. In the end, Mordor is more than a place. It is a manifestation of the darkest parts of Middle-earth, a realm where fear reigns supreme and hope goes to die. 2. Dol Guldur, the Hill of Sorcery. Nestled deep within the foreboding forest of Mirkwood, Dol Guldur is an ancient fortress cloaked in mystery and dread. Its name, which means Hill of Sorcery, hints at its dark past and the malevolent presence that once ruled over it. Dol Guldur served as the stronghold of Sauron during his guise as the Necromancer, a dark sorcerer who quietly gathered his power while Middle-earth's free peoples remained unaware of the growing threat in their midst. From the outside, Dol Guldur appears as a crumbling ruin, a decaying shadow of what might once have been a grand fortress. Its jagged towers loom above the dense, twisted trees of Mirkwood, like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The fortress's walls are covered in black moss and ancient cracked stones, giving it the appearance of a long-dead structure, but beneath this facade lies a well of dark magic and corruption. The land around Dol Guldur is warped and tainted by the evil that resides within. Trees near the fortress seem unnaturally twisted, their branches knotted and gnarled, their bark blackened and diseased. The very ground is dead, devoid of life or color, save for the occasional patch of dark, sickly-looking grass that struggles to grow in the tainted soil. The air itself feels heavy and oppressive, thick with a sense of wrongness that makes the hair on the back of one's neck stand on end. Dol Guldur's most terrifying aspect is the lingering presence of its former master, Sauron. Even after he fled the fortress to return to Mordor, the shadow of his dark power remains. The fortress is a place of concentrated malice, where the veil between the world of the living and the dead is thin, and the air is filled with whispers of those long departed. It is said that the spirits of the dead haunt Dol Guldur, their anguished cries echoing through its empty halls, drawn by the dark magic that still pulses through its walls. During Sauron's time as the necromancer, Dol Guldur became a nexus of evil activity. Dark creatures, including orcs and other twisted servants of Sauron, roamed the surrounding forest, keeping intruders at bay. The fortress itself housed unspeakable horrors. Dark rituals, enchantments, and secret dungeons where prisoners were tortured and experimented upon. Even after Sauron's departure, these evil practices left a permanent scar on the land. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Dol Guldur is the lingering sense of paranoia and fear it inspires. Those who approach the fortress often feel as though they are being watched, even when no one is around. Shadows seem to move on their own, flickering in the corners of one's vision, only to vanish when looked at directly. Strange, disembodied whispers echo through the halls, making even the bravest warriors second-guess their sanity. The very walls of Dol Guldur seem to hum with dark energy, a reminder of the countless lives that have been lost to its evil. In the later years of Middle-earth, the White Council, including Gandalf, Saruman, and Galadriel, launched an assault on Dol Guldur to drive out the necromancer. Though they succeeded in forcing Sauron to flee, the fortress remained a place of dark power, its ruins forever marked by the evil that once dwelled there. Dol Guldur is a place where no light shines, a fortress of shadows and fear that still haunts the minds of those who know of its existence. Even after Sauron's departure, its walls stand as a testament to the lingering, corrupting power of evil, a place where the very fabric of reality seems to bend under the weight of dark magic. 3. The Dead Marshes, a swamp of lost souls. The Dead Marshes are one of the most unsettling and eerie locations in all of Middle-earth. Located north of the Morannon, the marshes are a desolate and haunting expanse of waterlogged land, where history and horror have merged into one. What was once a battleground in the ancient War of the Last Alliance is now a vast, treacherous swamp filled with the spectral remnants of that great conflict. As Frodo, Sam, and Gollum journey through the Dead Marshes on their way to Mordor, they experience firsthand the terrifying nature of this landscape. The air above the marshes is thick with a damp, oppressive mist, making it difficult to see far ahead. The ground beneath their feet is treacherous, half solid, half swamp, constantly threatening to give way and swallow them whole. The surface of the marshes is covered with stagnant pools of brackish water, their surfaces reflecting an ominous grey sky. But it's not the water or the sinking ground that instills the greatest fear in those who pass through. It's the dead. Beneath the water's surface lie the bodies of the long-fallen, men, elves, and orcs who perished in the Battle of Dagorlad many ages ago. Their faces, pale and ghostly, can be seen floating just below the murky water, their eyes open in eternal anguish. These are not mere corpses, they are souls trapped in an endless, sorrowful existence. The Dead Marshes are cursed, and the spirits of those who fell in battle have not found peace. They seem to watch the living pass by, their hollow gazes following travelers with a disturbing intensity. Gollum's warning not to follow the lights, strange, ghostly flames that flicker above the water, becomes a chilling necessity. These lights, known as corpse candles, are said to lure the unwary into the deeper parts of the swamp, where they would surely drown or be consumed by whatever dark forces haunt the marshes. Frodo, mesmerized by the faces and the lights, nearly succumbs to this strange magic, proving how dangerous these waters truly are. The marshes are more than just a physical hazard. They are a place of immense spiritual torment. The presence of so many dead souls has warped the very land, turning it into a realm where the veil between life and death is thin. The dead cannot speak, but their presence is felt in every part of the marshes, from the chilling air to the unnatural silence that seems to hang over the land like a shroud. The living are intruders in this place, and the spirits that reside there are not welcoming. Travelers through the Dead Marshes often report feeling an overwhelming sense of despair and fatigue, as though the marsh itself is sapping their will to live. The combination of the haunting spirits, the dangerous terrain, and the ever-present gloom creates an atmosphere of unrelenting dread. Even Gollum, who has spent years wandering through some of the darkest places in Middle-earth, is visibly afraid of the Dead Marshes, referring to them as a place where the dead do not rest. In the end, the Dead Marshes are a living tomb, a reminder of the horrors of war and the souls left behind, forever bound to the place where they fell. There is no redemption here, no peace, only the endless, watery grave that stretches as far as the eye can see. 4. Minas Morgul, the City of the Dead. Once a shining beacon of hope, Minas Morgul was originally known as Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon. Built by the Númenóreans, this city was a magnificent stronghold meant to guard the eastern borders of Gondor and stand as a counterpoint to Minas Anor, later known as Minas Tirith. It was a place of beauty, gleaming under the light of the moon, its towers and walls crafted with the same skill and grandeur as the other great fortresses of Gondor. However, its fate took a horrifying turn when it fell into the hands of Sauron's forces and was claimed by the Nazgul, specifically the Witch King of Angmar, who transformed it into one of the most terrifying places in Middle-earth. The once beautiful city became corrupted beyond recognition, twisted into a dark and evil mockery of its former self. The skies above Minas Morgul are perpetually clouded, casting the entire area in a sickly, unnatural glow. The city itself emits an eerie, pale green light, which flickers like a ghostly flame, casting long, twisted shadows over the valley below. This light is neither warm nor inviting. Instead, it chills the blood of anyone who looks upon it. The very walls of the city seem to pulse with a dark, malevolent energy, as if the stones themselves are alive with the evil that dwells within. Minas Morgul is no longer a place for the living. The Witch King, the leader of the Ringwraiths, turned it into a stronghold of death and darkness, a place where no light of goodness or hope can penetrate. The city's towers are jagged and cruel, with twisted spires that claw at the sky. The architecture, once a testament to the skill and beauty of the Númenóreans, has been warped into something grotesque and menacing, a visual representation of the corruption that has taken hold of the city. The gates of Minas Morgul, which once welcomed travelers with the promise of safety and refuge, have been twisted into monstrous, jagged forms, resembling the gaping maw of some hideous beast. These gates are no longer a symbol of protection, but of doom, and those who pass through them are unlikely to ever return. The most terrifying aspect of Minas Morgul is the aura of dread that surrounds it. The city is alive with dark magic, and even from a distance, it exerts a suffocating, oppressive influence over all who come near. The Witch King's presence, though often unseen, can be felt in every shadow and whisper that emanates from the city's depths. His power has seeped into the very stones of Minas Morgul, and those who approach it are often overwhelmed by a sense of paralyzing fear and despair. The closer one gets to the city, the stronger this feeling becomes, as though the city itself is a living entity, feeding off the terror of those who come too close. The unnatural silence that pervades Minas Morgul is broken only by the occasional distant wail or scream carried on the wind from the city's dark depths. These sounds are unsettling, suggesting that unspeakable horrors are taking place within the city's shadowy halls. The air is thick with the stench of decay, as though the city itself is rotting from within, and yet, despite its decrepit state, Minas Morgul remains a formidable fortress. The Witch King's power has fortified the city, making it a nearly impenetrable bastion of evil. The Morgul Val, the valley in which the city lies, is equally as terrifying. The once fertile land surrounding Minas Ithil has become a desolate, barren wasteland, tainted by the dark magic that flows from the city like a poison. The very plants and trees have twisted into grotesque shapes, their leaves blackened and withered, and the river that runs through the valley glows with an unnatural light, as though it has been corrupted by the same dark forces that have overtaken the city. The air is heavy with a strange, noxious fog, which clings to the skin and seeps into the lungs, making it difficult to breathe. It is as though the land itself is dying, suffocating under the weight of the evil that has taken root in Minas Morgul. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Minas Morgul is its association with the Nazgul, the ring-wraiths. These fearsome servants of Sauron make their home within the city's walls, and their presence is a constant reminder of the city's dark nature. The Witch King, their leader, is the most powerful of the Nazgul, and his mere presence within Minas Morgul has infused the city with his malevolent power. The Nazgul are creatures of shadow and fear, and their influence over Minas Morgul has turned the city into a place of nightmares, where the living dare not tread. In the end, Minas Morgul is a city of death and despair, a place where hope goes to die. Its twisted towers and eerie green light are a constant reminder of the power of Sauron and his servants, and the city stands as a testament to the corrupting influence of evil. Those who approach its gates do so at their own peril, for Minas Morgul is not a place for the living, and its shadows are filled with horrors beyond imagining. 5. The Paths of the Dead, a cursed passage. The Paths of the Dead are one of the most fearsome and mysterious places in Middle-earth, a dark and cursed passage hidden beneath the mountains that run between Rohan and Gondor. The entrance to the paths lies at the Dwemerberg, a mountain shrouded in legend and fear. Few have ever dared to enter this shadowy, haunted passage, and fewer still have returned to tell the tale. The Paths of the Dead are home to an ancient and cursed army, an army of men who once swore an oath to aid Isildur during the War of the Last Alliance, but, out of cowardice or treachery, failed to fulfill their promise. For their betrayal, Isildur cursed them, condemning them to wander the paths of the dead until their oath was fulfilled. The entrance to the paths is a dark and foreboding cave, known as the Dark Door. The very air around this entrance is thick with an unnatural chill, and the ground is littered with stones that seem to have fallen from the mountain, as if it too seeks to prevent anyone from entering. As one approaches the entrance, the sky darkens and the wind dies, leaving an eerie stillness in the air. The passage itself is a yawning black mouth, a portal into the unknown, filled with shadows and ancient malice. Even the bravest warriors feel their courage wane as they stand before the dark door, and many have turned back, unwilling to face whatever lies within. Those who enter the paths of the dead are immediately enveloped by a profound and suffocating darkness. The air inside the passage is cold and stale, untouched by the sun for millennia. The walls are slick with moisture, and the ground beneath is uneven, often covered in loose rocks that shift treacherously underfoot. The tunnel is narrow and winding, its passageways seeming to twist in unnatural ways, as though the mountain itself is conspiring to trap those who venture too far. The atmosphere is oppressive, filled with an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the very air is alive with the restless spirits of the dead. The deeper one travels into the paths, the more tangible the presence of the dead becomes. Whispers seem to come from the very walls, faint but unmistakable, like the murmurs of long-forgotten voices. The sound of footsteps echoes eerily, though it often feels as though these steps belong not to the living, but to the spectral inhabitants of the tunnel. Flickers of movement appear just beyond the edge of sight, shadows that seem to shift and move on their own, disappearing when looked at directly. The dead, though unseen, are always present, their invisible eyes watching the intruders with cold, ghostly intent. The dead themselves, known as the Oathbreakers, are bound to this passage by Isildur's curse. Their spectral forms wander through the darkness, unable to leave or find rest until their ancient debt is repaid. They are not malevolent, but their presence is undeniably terrifying. The Oathbreakers are neither truly alive nor dead, trapped in a liminal state between the two, their spirits chained to the paths for eternity. Their very existence is a reminder of the consequences of betrayal and broken oaths, and their restless souls are doomed to wander these haunted halls until they are summoned to fulfill their vow. As Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli make their perilous journey through the paths of the dead, the sense of dread and foreboding only deepens. Even Legolas, an elf whose people are often untouched by fear, can feel the oppressive weight of the dead surrounding them. Gimli, for all his bravery in battle, finds himself nearly paralyzed with terror as the shadows close in around them. The passage seems to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways that defy logic, as though the very mountain is conspiring to keep them lost in its depths. Only Aragorn's unshakable determination and his claim to the throne of Gondor give them the strength to continue. At the heart of the paths lies the Dwemerberg's central chamber, a vast, echoing cavern where the dead gather in silence. The chamber is filled with an ancient, oppressive darkness, and the air is thick with the presence of the dead. Aragorn, wielding the reforged blade Andúril, confronts the Oathbreakers and calls upon them to fulfill their ancient vow. His command carries the weight of kingship, and the dead are finally compelled to follow him, breaking the curse that has bound them for so many ages. In the end, the paths of the dead are not just a physical journey, but a psychological trial. The passage is filled with the remnants of a tragic history, a place where the mistakes and betrayals of the past continue to haunt the present. The overwhelming fear and darkness that pervade the paths are a reflection of the unresolved spirits that dwell within, bound to the earth by their unfulfilled oaths. It is a place of terror and sorrow, where the living walk among the dead, and the weight of ancient curses hangs heavy in the air. 6. The Barrow Downs, graves of ancient evil. The Barrow Downs, an eerie and haunted region in the north of Middle-earth, is a place where the land itself seems to hold on to the memories of the dead, refusing to let go of ancient malevolent forces. Located west of Bree and north of the Old Forest, this desolate expanse is littered with burial mounds, each one a silent testament to the kings, warriors, and nobles of old, who were laid to rest here long before the rise of the kingdoms of men. The Barrow Downs are drenched in an ancient, pervasive gloom, where the past lingers on in ghostly echoes and the living dare not linger. The downs themselves are rolling, mist-shrouded hills, each one crowned with a barrow, a burial mound constructed thousands of years ago. These mounds, while appearing quiet and serene from a distance, are anything but. The closer one gets, the more oppressive the atmosphere becomes. The fog that clings to the downs is thick and unyielding, often moving in unnatural ways, as though it has a mind of its own. Strange sounds, whispers, moans, and the distant clink of metal can be heard on the wind, though there are no visible sources for these noises. The landscape is bleak, and the constant creeping fog gives the impression that the Downs are perpetually trapped in twilight, never fully seeing the light of day. The Barrow Downs are a place where history feels alive, too alive in fact. The spirits of those buried here do not rest in peace. Barrow wights, ancient and malevolent spirits, haunt the mounds, drawn to the power of the relics and bones interred within them. These wights are not the souls of the dead kings themselves, but rather dark spirits that have taken up residence in the tombs, feeding on the fear and despair of any who are unlucky enough to wander into their domain. Their presence is marked by an unnatural chill that permeates the air, a cold that seeps into the bones and fills the mind with dread. The Barrow wights are formidable and terrifying entities. They can emerge from the mounds with no warning, appearing as shadowy, ghost-like figures, their eyes glowing with a cold, spectral light. These wights have the ability to paralyze their victims with fear, wrapping them in the icy grip of despair. They lure their prey into the barrows, where they entomb them in a nightmare of darkness, cold stone, and death. Their touch is deathly cold, and their voices, when they speak, are hollow and filled with malice. The very air inside the barrows is stifling, thick with the weight of ages and the lingering presence of dark magic. The barrows themselves are ancient and eerie. Inside, they are cold, damp, and dark, with winding stone passageways leading to chambers filled with the relics of those long dead. Broken swords, rusted shields, and ancient armor are strewn about, remnants of a time when the dead within these mounds were mighty kings and warriors. But now, those who venture inside are more likely to find themselves trapped by the Barrow wights, who are always watching, waiting to ensnare the living. The sense of entrapment within these tombs is overwhelming, with the walls seeming to close in, and the darkness becoming a living, suffocating entity that wraps itself around intruders. Even the land surrounding the Barrow Downs is filled with a sense of unease. The area is isolated, far from any signs of civilization, and the few travelers who dare to cross the downs speak of a heavy, stifling presence that follows them. There are no birds here, no sounds of life, only the whispers of the dead carried on the wind. The downs seem almost sentient, as if the land itself is aware of the ancient evils that dwell beneath it and seeks to keep them contained. But barely. The fog, ever present and thick, seems to trap unwary travelers, leading them toward the barrows as if it were guiding them to their doom. One of the most harrowing encounters with the Barrow Downs occurs when Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin find themselves ensnared by a Barrow wight. After falling asleep on the downs, they wake to find themselves captured, entombed in a dark, cold barrow, the wight's malice hanging over them like a death sentence. Bound in shadowy chains, they lie helpless as the Barrow wight chants its chilling incantations, preparing to sacrifice them to the dark forces that rule this cursed place. It is only through Frodo's desperate bravery and the light of the elven blade that they manage to escape. But the memory of the Barrow Downs leaves a permanent scar on their minds. The Barrow Downs are a place where time seems to stand still, and the weight of history presses down on the living. The spirits of the past refuse to fade away, their presence a constant reminder that the ancient evils of Middle-earth are never truly gone. To wander the Barrow Downs is to risk being lost in the mists of time, trapped in a place where death lingers and the wights watch, waiting for the next soul to stumble into their grasp. 7. Mirkwood, the enchanted, twisted forest. Mirkwood is a vast, foreboding forest that stretches across the northeastern part of Middle-earth, its dark reputation known far and wide. Once called Greenwood the Great, Mirkwood was a place of beauty and light, a lush, vibrant woodland filled with life. However, that all changed with the growing influence of Sauron, who, in the guise of the necromancer, settled in Dol Guldur at the southern edge of the forest. His presence corrupted the land, transforming it into the dark, twisted realm known as Mirkwood. From then on, The forest became a place of nightmares, where the light struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, and where danger lurked in every shadow. Entering Mirkwood is like stepping into another world, a world where nature itself seems hostile and malign. The trees are ancient and gnarled, their thick branches intertwined above, blocking out the sun and casting the forest floor into perpetual twilight. The air is heavy with an oppressive sense of decay, a sickly, earthy smell that clings to everything. The underbrush is thick with thorny vines and twisted roots that seem to reach out and trip those who venture too far off the path, as though the forest itself is trying to ensnare them. The atmosphere in Mirkwood is one of suffocating darkness and unease. The deeper one ventures into the forest, the more disorienting it becomes. Paths that once seemed clear quickly vanish into the undergrowth, and the landmarks shift and change as though the forest is actively working to confuse and trap travelers. The trees seem to whisper to one another in voices too low to understand, but filled with menace, and the very air feels thick with malice. The light that does manage to pierce the canopy is pale and sickly, casting long, distorted shadows that flicker and dance unnervingly in the corner of one's vision. One of the greatest dangers in Mirkwood is the giant spiders that have made the forest their home. These monstrous creatures, descendants of Ungoliant, the ancient being of darkness, spin massive webs between the trees, waiting for unsuspecting prey to stumble into their silken traps. The spiders of Mirkwood are intelligent, malevolent beings, far more than simple beasts. They hunt with cunning, spinning webs across the forest floor and in the branches above, creating an almost invisible network of death. Their venom paralyzes their victims, leaving them helpless as the spiders descend to feast. When Bilbo Baggins and the company of dwarves passed through Mirkwood on their quest to the Lonely Mountain, they encountered these spiders firsthand. After wandering off the path and becoming lost in the dense forest, they were soon ensnared in the spiders' webs. The creatures descended upon them with terrifying speed, paralyzing the dwarves and wrapping them in thick, suffocating silk. Bilbo, only barely managing to avoid capture, was forced to confront the spiders, using his sword sting and the power of the One Ring to free his companions. The encounter with the spiders left the group shaken, and it was a stark reminder of the horrors that lurk within Mirkwood. But the spiders are not the only threat in the forest. The very land itself has been tainted by the dark influence of Dol Guldur, and the forest is filled with strange, malevolent creatures that seem to exist solely to cause harm. Wolves, bats, and other twisted animals roam the woods, their eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. Even the plants are dangerous. Some are carnivorous, with vines that lash out at anything that comes near, while others emit a toxic sap that can cause hallucinations or even death. Time within Mirkwood feels distorted, as though the forest exists in its own strange reality. Days and nights blur together, and travelers often find themselves wandering in circles, unable to find their way out. Those who stray too far from the path risk becoming lost forever, their minds consumed by the darkness of the forest. The elves of Thranduil's realm, who live in the northern part of the forest, are the only beings who seem able to navigate Mirkwood with any degree of safety, though even they do not venture too far into the darker regions. The southern reaches of Mirkwood, closest to Dol Guldur, are the most dangerous. Here the influence of Sauron is strongest, and the very air seems to throb with dark magic. Strange, ghostly lights flicker between the trees, leading travelers deeper into the forest, where they are never seen again. The ground is swampy and treacherous, with pools of stagnant water that seem to swallow anything that touches them. It is said that the spirits of the dead wander these parts of Mirkwood, forever trapped by the dark power that emanates from Dol Guldur. Mirkwood is not just a physical danger, it is a psychological one as well. The forest has a way of playing tricks on the mind, feeding on fear and despair. The longer one stays within its borders, the more the darkness seeps into their thoughts, filling them with dread and hopelessness. The oppressive atmosphere, the constant threat of unseen enemies, and the knowledge that escape might never come can drive even the bravest of souls to madness. In the end, Mirkwood is a place where darkness reigns, a forest that has been twisted by evil, and where no light of hope can penetrate. It is a land of ancient malevolence, where the trees themselves seem to plot the downfall of any who dare enter. For those who must pass through it, the only hope of survival is to stay on the path. But even that is no guarantee of safety in the shadow-haunted woods of Mirkwood.